is Heidi Muyeso-Kunzman with the Northeast Regional Center for Rural Development and the Community and Regional Development Institute at Cornell University. On behalf of my colleagues at the Northeast Regional Center, I'm very pleased to welcome you to the fourth webinar in our 2011 Highlight Series on the Maryland Rural Enterprise Development Center. For those of you who are new to the Highlight Series, it is designed to increase the visibility of research and extension activities throughout the Northeast that are designed to strengthen rural communities and support community and economic development. At the center, we are very pleased to be able to help build awareness of these activities with the goal of catalyzing collaboration among those of us working in these areas. We're delighted to have Ginger Myers with the University of Maryland Extension join us to talk about the web-based Rural Business Development Center that she and her colleagues at the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources at the University of Maryland have developed through the Community Resource and Economic Development Extension Impact Team. So we've wanted to get Ginger on for a while. Ginger is also one of our Technical Advisory Committee members, and we're really pleased to have her. In addition to being the Director of the Rural Enterprise Development Center, Ginger is a marketing specialist in the College of Agriculture and Natural Resources with the University of Maryland Extension and has over 30 years of experience in production agriculture, agribusiness, and consulting. In these roles, she works with agricultural entrepreneurs, develops new markets and networking opportunities, works with new and beginning farmers, and assists with business development and business planning. Along with her husband, Ginger also operates a grass-based livestock farm. And I'll just add that I've known and appreciated Ginger's work for several years now, seeing a lot of it as very innovative when I was formerly working for the Community Food and Agriculture program at Cornell. So before turning the floor over to Ginger, I want to review a couple of logistical details. I'm going to post a file with a PDF of this presentation, including a little more detail on a couple of slides than will actually be on the slides when we move through it. You can download it if you wish, and this will also be posted on the NERCRD website. So I'll bring that up in just a little bit. We encourage questions and comments. Simply type them into the chat box, and we'll break throughout the presentation to take them. If you require a point of clarification, please bring it up at that time, and we'll address it sooner than later. The webinar is being recorded, and providing that we don't have any technical difficulties, the archived recording will be posted on the NERCRD website. And with respect to technical difficulties, we already had a couple this morning. It just seems to be part and parcel of sometimes doing webinars. Ginger was having trouble initially getting in, and we got her in, and we also had some sound difficulties, but I think they're over them, so hopefully we have everything out of the way. But if something comes up, just bear with us and we'll work through it. So with that, are there any questions at this point? Okay, Ginger, I'm going to turn it over to you.
Thank you, and good morning to all, and thank you for joining us for this session. I'd like to thank the Northeast Regional Center for Rural Development for giving me this opportunity to share with you a little bit about a tool we've developed here at the University of Maryland Extension to help move forward our rural and community business development initiative. I'd also like to thank Heidi for being the moderator somewhat this morning. I have a tendency to ramble, and she's going to help guide me along that we get your questions in and follow-up surveys and so forth, so I do appreciate that. A little more highlight on my pedigree, which she read, and probably the most important takeaway there is actually the bullet that says what I'm currently working with, the new ag entrepreneurs, people who are expanding existing enterprises, looking for new opportunities and making change, and with that, doing it in a sense of business development and actually putting plans down and being much more methodical than we've been in the past about these things. Today's presentation is organized so that we cover the need. Why did we go to the effort to build this website and become involved in community and rural economic development? Take a look at the beginning of what we see as the solutions here in Maryland, but we also think it's transferable to anywhere where you work with rural development. To talk about a web-based center, which was what we've designed as a tool, and a little bit about the successes and train wrecks with that and where we're headed next. Some of the outcomes that we've seen already, the website is only 2 years old, but we do have some statistics to share and some good anecdotal information as well. And then what are we doing next? How are we going to expand and build and leverage in a time when we're all experiencing some financial shortfalls and need to look at collaboration and how we leverage things that we're really addressing client needs while using the resources we do have to best advantage. To begin with identifying key issues, though, we hear and we read that the farming community and Know Your Farmer programs has raised the appreciation for where our food comes from and the art of farming. We still do have, particularly in urban areas, I think, a bit of an identity crisis. Who wants to farm? Particularly in the Baltimore, D.C. corridor where we're so technology savvy, I think sometimes the public and even other business development entities and supporters don't know that agriculture is so highly technical, that it has many of the same business resource needs as any other type of industry, and they're just a little out of sync with what the realities are in farming, agriculture, and rural development today. Of course, one of the big drivers has been the economy and the farmer's share of the dollar returned. This slide has to do with the food dollar. You know, for years we said that when farmers direct marketed their products through farmers markets, CSAs, they got to keep 80 cents on the dollar, whereas when they often did wholesale or worked with a broker, they came up with about 20 cents. We're now saying this 11.6 cents out of the dollar spent for food as an example because we haven't always tracked the cost of production against that 20 cents as well. So in economic times where we need to look at how to make rural communities more profitable, that agriculture, forestry, natural resources, all need to look at how do we improve profitability. The other sort of third leg on the stool of what's the problem has been maintaining industry resources. For agriculture, natural resource industries, rural development, to survive, it needs the components of the industry itself. For instance, land. In Maryland, land is very expensive. It's one of the biggest hurdles we have for new or expanding farming or agricultural enterprises to operate is how to secure a land space when the costs are so high. We have a lot of competition, of course, from housing, but also from other traditional economic development, expanding plants and relocating facilities on land that's close to major highways and transportation routes, particularly here in the Northeast corridor. So that can be a real challenge to find the land base you need. The other is that because land is so expensive, we're seeing more parcelization in smaller farms, driven by the cost of land, but also by the cost of labor to produce anything on that land. So as we have this parcelization, we're not looking at acres and acres of a commodity crop here. We're looking at enterprises that are very land not as intensive, such as greenhouse industry, where you can do a lot of growing on small space, succession plantings, things that can be high-value crops. The third component for the industry, and which hasn't always come to the front here, at least in Maryland, is a concern about the quantity and quality of water. While that's always been an issue in the West, here in the East, we felt we had good aquifers, we had a constant supply, but with housing booms, with the advent of using more water to intensely water crops, particularly in the horticulture industry, there is a concern about where our water's coming from, how much, and who has the rights for it. And of course, without water, we don't grow a lot of vegetables and fruits, so irrigation is primary here in Maryland. As anywhere where the hort industry is, you know you've got to have a good water supply. And our fourth concern, and it's, I think it is reflected nationwide is the average age of farmers. We know that's an aging population, and the question is, who will farm here in the future? What will that look like? How will we support them? But it's not our grandfather's farm anymore, and the land-based type of enterprise that's there and the people who are going to farm in the future are perhaps different than have been in the past and need a different support network. We just highlighted three obstacles or impediments to rural development and economic growth in our rural communities. But to highlight anywhere on the East Coast, a real asset is our location with great market potential. When you look at the corridor here in the East running from Richmond to Boston and even on up into Maine, we're looking at potential with clients very closely located to markets. We have a customer that's diversified. I just was recently at a school district where they had 52 different languages in the school district. We have a very diverse population. With that comes diverse eating habits, diverse buying habits that open great market potential for a variety of products, not just raw products, but value added as well. The corridor in the Northeast, of course, is the fourth largest metropolitan area in the country. While the housing boom may seem difficult for farmers, it's brought their customers right next door. Can't always be said of other regions such as in the Midwest. The Northeast also is a region with a lot of institutes of higher education and advanced degrees in the country. And these folks are well aware of their nutritional needs, current trends, concerns about the environment, and other things that impact their lives. Of course, we also have a broad diversity of industrial segments here in our area, anywhere from health services to biotech. Again, we traditionally think of food and fiber. Sometimes we forget that the biotech industry are looking for certain types of animals for part of their needs. We're also looking at pharmacology, a whole different segment of agriculture that can grow pharmaceutical crops for health. So a broad diversity outside traditional cow and plow agriculture that we can look to develop here in the Northeast segment. And of course, our proximity to government, rails, roads, and airports give us a transportation and distribution network that's the envy of the country here. So we do have some very major components for economic development, business development in this region for our rural communities to take advantage of. And I'll take a quick pause. I don't know if anyone has a question or clarification on any of these points.
So if you have a question at this point, please drop it in the chat box. I don't see anyone typing Ginger. I would say go ahead, and if we get any, we'll grab them right at the next one.
Okay, thank you. So having kind of laid out the problem, and each of you can kind of think about how that reflects in your own region. We looked at the University of Maryland toward the future and looked at what can we do. Extension can't do everything. Who are the partners already working in this area? We're going to have to leverage funds. And how do we build that kind of a collaborative network? I came to Extension through agricultural marketing and economic development, a much more traditional office where jobs, tax base were often discussed, where I worked with the state business development organizations. And coming to Extension, I started to ask the question, why should we be involved when the state was already doing that? Small business development centers have been around for a very long time and are often affiliated with universities. What would Extension bring to the table that existing economic development agencies and organizations weren't already doing? And to look at that question meant that we had to step back and look at what assets can Extension bring to the table that other organizations don't have? Or what is the public value of Extension's work in this area? And I think this is a question that all of us are going to have to answer more often about the public value of our work as to why we should be doing it. What do we bring to the table? And the discussion often isn't within our own organization as much as the stakeholders who are looking at our institutions or our programs and asking, why should we share funding for that? Why should this program exist or be brought forward? We need to give a very clear message about our work to those kinds of stakeholders. And there are three areas that our team identified what Extension can bring to rural economic development that perhaps is not always a component of other agricultural service providers in this area. The first was we should come forward when there's an informational gap. Working with small business development centers in the past, I found that some of them are aware of components of an agricultural business or a food service business, while others really do not have a lot of background in this area. They're not sure how to do enterprise budgets. They're not familiar with the type of industry assets or the financial statements that agricultural and rural business development enterprises often have to file or issue. And so when we can help with that, when we can provide them that kind of information, that calls for our type of expertise. And again, I also listed access to expertise. In the land grant system, not only do we have business development information, but access to expertise across the land grant system. If someone's looking to develop, say, a mushroom business, specialty mushrooms, while we do not have that expertise at the University of Maryland, I know that I can go to my colleagues at Penn State and find a wealth of information there for that entrepreneur looking at that business. So the land grant system network provides that type of expertise. Extension programming and assistance can address issues of fairness. And I use fairness from the standpoint of understanding the difference that may arise from an agricultural enterprise versus a traditional business, say an auto repair shop. There may be some financial programs through USDA excuse me, or other financial assistance targeted specifically to rural enterprises that our colleagues may not be aware of, so we can be the link to that kind of information and asset. And then we can bring to the table issues of public benefit about rural and agricultural enterprises. For instance, we know that the cost of goods and services for farms is much lower than traditional industry in an area. When you look at tax-based services, we can help substantiate why these farms are important, why these types of business contribute far beyond the tax base that they pay into. It's a matter of tax savings. And of course, there's often looking at environmental issues in industries where we would be a real asset on that. Excuse me.
Ginger, feel free to grab a drink if you need to.
Thank you. That's what I was just doing.
Okay.
In addressing the issues, we also looked at what kind of resources and tools we had. And like many extension programs, we had people who were doing pieces of rural development, nutrition, health, forestry, traditional ag crops, but not really a core base of anyone dedicated specifically to that topic. So we wanted to bring together resources and components outside of Extension that would help the rural businesses retention in Maryland so that we can keep them going, but also expand and attract new business here. And I like to use this icon of the tree here because when we got together, we identified stakeholders in the state who also work on this that could be partners. We reached out to communities, small and rural communities that were working on asset mapping or had very vibrant entrepreneurial programs going or youth programs that we knew we wanted to fold into this idea of business and entrepreneurship. We looked at the access to expertise that we had on campus and beyond, and we also identified that we were not ever going to build a brick and mortar facility to do this, or even probably rent space across the state. This would need to be web-based. So when we talk about the center, we're going to talk about it. It's going to look like a tree, but please recognize that there was a whole lot of development down at the root system to get this up and going. The site was launched February of '09, and we still periodically go back to a group of stakeholders we have that represent industry and government segments and ask them to review the site and also bring forward issues so that we can strengthen these roots and keep this tree growing. An example of some of those partnerships, we've already talked about some of the financial. In Maryland, we have Marbidco, which is a rural lending corporation dedicated solely to looking at rural and agricultural, natural resource-based type industries. There's a set of rural councils, different regions. Certainly the Farm Bureau and other county development offices. In Maryland, we also have certain counties that have an agricultural marketing and economic development specialist on staff dedicated just to that county. So we wanted to be involved with them. And of course, our state agencies that farmers and business folks need to turn to anytime they're starting a business or perhaps looking at regulations and license and permits that we need. We looked at those kinds of partnerships and brought them in as stakeholders, but also, as you'll see later, using the site as a launch pad to their sites as well. Regionally and nationally, we try to connect, of course, with the Northeast Center, USDA, FDA, FSIS, and we connect with all those through links, but we also often publicize their programs because they are resources for our folks that they may not find through traditional email or announcements or other channels. Early on, when developing the Maryland Rural Enterprise Development Center, we started to draw out a tree of what kind of services, components, tools would we put on the site that could be both web-based and timed what was really needed. Let's address what's needed most first. So I did some survey work with those partners on the previous slide and asked them to tell me what they thought Maryland's rural entrepreneurs needed to master to develop their businesses. And I would venture that the same results will come up across the country otherwise, other than Maryland as well. And of course, the first thing that came out on the survey was that the need to write a business plan. Now, sometimes when I bring that to an agricultural group, I see the eyes start to glaze over. We really need to look at that as talking about their business development map and a way that they can get this down on paper and to really give some thought and work this through. Second was financing, and we are looking at that in Maryland. As I said, there's Marbidco. We're looking at some other institutions that have not traditionally gotten into agriculture and natural resource-based industries or small home-based community businesses, such as microfinancing, to help get some of these launched. Then we looked at access to some professional services. Do they know what insurances they need, legal advice? And there's always the regulatory and compliance issues that we need to address. So we pulled those top four out and said the first pages we put up need to start helping with some of this. We did not want to neglect, though, some of the other things, such as technical support or product development. On the first slide, you may remember that while I am the director of the center, as many extension people are, I have a split position that also puts me as the marketing specialist in this area. So I try to address some of these other things that are directly tied to marketing a product or developing a market to support those that way.
So, Ginger, I don't know if you saw it, but our poll question that we had there was already actually kind of answered by both Dan and our colleague that's on from West Virginia State. So I don't know if you were able to see those in your in the chat box. So West Virginia said that they're a little unique in that they've designed funding partnerships with county and regional EDAs, and that their agents are their reps on the farmland protection boards, and also serve in large program development efforts. And then Dan in Cuyahoga County in New York mentioned that the County Economic Development Office handles large projects, but they recognize the value of extension for smaller projects and beginning farmers. They also work with the Small Business Development Center office in Syracuse, who refers clients back to them. So it was interesting to see that coming up.
Yes, a little different approach. And I would say these are kind of the larger funnel things that we see. And I'm hoping as we go forward, when we talk a little more about the center is turning the funnel somewhat inward and saying, let's hone down to looking at specific enterprises, or as I like to tell my clients, you don't know what you don't know about starting some of these things. And so thank you for the feedback. I'll take a minute to look at that some more when we're over, and perhaps be back in touch with you.
And if anybody else has any other questions on what Ginger shared so far, please feel free to type it in. I'll raise one while we're waiting, and that is, in addition to reaching out to those 11 agencies and organizations, did you contact any, and I'm sure that comes in just from your experience as well, but any business owners or prospective users? I just think that's it's neat that you reached out to that many different groups, and I just wondered if any of the actual business folks were involved as well.
Yes, we have a stakeholders group of actually 22 people, and 4 of them are farmers. And it was a little surprising when I first previewed the site. The farmers were the most excited about what they saw there. A few of the traditional agriculture folks wanted to know why I had so many hokey things on the site about some of these new enterprises.
Huh.
And so I actually had to step back and put a little more traditional ag on. The farmers have been sort of my focus group for actually using the tools that we post. When someone has time to go and look at the site, you're going to see we have some business planning tools, some enterprise budgets. I actually often send those out to my farmers and ask them whether these work or they make sense for them.
Mm-hmm. That's great. Okay, and it looks like Dan is typing a question maybe, so we'll give it just a second to see what comes across.
While Dan's typing, I will go back to his comment about economic development focusing on jobs. That is very traditional here as well. You know, they focus on job development and flight risks. Mm-hmm. And anybody who owns land isn't going to pick up and leave very quick their business. So traditional economic development doesn't usually pay much attention to farms or agribusinesses that way. And certainly many of the jobs are family members or businesses with less than 10 folks. So they don't get a lot of points for developing new jobs. So oftentimes what we talk about is the bump out on the economic impact of who else is involved or who is impacted by this business in the area. For instance, if farms fail, the equipment dealer also fails, or the accountants also lose clients. So we do have to frame sometimes this job issue, and I will address that with some statistics too that are later on in the slides.
Okay, Ginger, so did you see this question was, how did you get the Maryland Department of Agriculture in to assist?
I come from Pennsylvania originally, where agriculture is a very strong industry and very active in their Department of Ag. When I came to Maryland, agriculture has a little different priority in some things here as far as the state budgets go. They are not, MDA is not always as well funded as some others. They are always looking for partners to do some work, and I include them in everything. They are often understaffed, but they are willing to come out and work on projects with me. I have a lot of links to their pages. Our marketing staff here in Maryland, when I first started working in economic development, they had 10 people at the Maryland Department of Ag doing marketing. They're down to 3 now. So in the area of business development, they see opportunities but don't have the staff to work on it. So they're very willing to come and be part of programming.
It seems like that collaboration is even more important as our budgets continue to decline. So it's almost like stuff that may not have been easy before in terms of collaboration or might not have felt comfortable are almost being just fostered out of necessity.
Right, and the other thing that we're recognizing here is that not only are the funding sources shrinking, that unless we start to collaborate and co-write, as West Virginia is saying here, some proposals together, we're actually competing against each other for these dollars. If we can partner, if we can use websites and personnel together to write a stronger proposal and not compete and put one proposal in rather than 3 little ones, we're getting a better return for our proposal efforts as well.
That's a great point. And thank you, West Virginia, for chiming in there. Those are good suggestions. Okay, Ginger, I think we can move on.
Okay, changing gears a little bit, we've talked about the need, we've talked about who we work with and why, and now I'd like to show you the center itself. The Maryland Rural Enterprise Development Center was developed for the sole purpose of increasing rural prosperity. Now, there's a lot of components that go into it. We talk about community development, we talk environmental issues, we talk about business development and retention, but at the end of the day, it's keeping our rural communities prosperous economically, environmentally, and sustainably. And so that's kind of a broad brush, but when you think about it in terms of rural prosperity, they all fit together. As I said, we were never going to have a brick and mortar facility, so we went totally to a 24/7 web portal, a one-stop sort of shop for what's out there. We've talked about it in the state for years with various groups, to have some kind of clearinghouse for where are the regs, where are the programs, how do you find out about this or that. So the center provides that as a place to sort of park all of this. It is participatory in that you can come in and you can read, you can see videos, you can download MP3 programming, you can fill out forms, or you can just research there. And again, I tell people that it is, you don't know what you don't know till you come there to learn. And then also, it is a launch pad. It doesn't have the final information on everything, but it gives people enough information that when they call an extension agent or a state regulatory agency, they have some backgrounding on which questions to ask for clarification. One of the things that was discussed when developing this tool was that we have less and less time to be on the phone talking someone through a concept. While we want to spend time with our clients, it would be great if they could go somewhere first and read about, say, growing pumpkins and what's involved and the possible economic returns before they called us about specifically laying out fields for pumpkins. Also, we found that some of our co-workers and other agencies who use the site were having the same kind of concern. At the health department, the sanitarians were saying we get the same question 8 times a day on the phone. You know, how do I get into making cheese on my farm? Well, they actually have a form and a step-through guidance sheet where you can actually see what do you need before you go to the Center for Milk Control in Maryland to talk about putting a little cheese plant on your farm. If we could have a site where people could go read about this first, it would be much more effective for agency people and extension staff than to do the follow-up work. So again, this is out here, and I find on this 24/7 web portal that we get a lot of hits over the weekend when people have time to sit down and shop and look around at what they're interested in doing. And again, no slight to our small business development centers or our state agencies that work in economic development, but this is the first agricultural site that's totally developed to nothing but agricultural natural resource business development.
And we have a question related to that I think makes sense to take now. Ginger, is the information specific to Maryland, or would it be valuable to other states? And I think what I heard you say earlier is that there is some specific, but also a lot that would be of value to other states. Is that correct?
That's correct. When, for example, if you're thinking about making cheese on your farm, certainly looking at the site and reading about some of the type of equipment you're going to need, training, market feasibility is transferable anywhere. When you start to look about the regs to actually build something on your farm, the site bores right down to the county level in Maryland. And we know that that's probably different for other states. So when we talk about production, here in Maryland, the climate is a little different. You're going to have to take that into account. The production pretty much cuts across lines. Anything regulatory, we kept strictly to Maryland, and oftentimes Maryland has also adopted federal regulations. You need to check in your state that perhaps those are the same for you as well. I always advise folks on the regulations to go back to their departments, their state departments of health and agriculture for those.
Thank you.
Also, in developing the site, we did want to address some of the job and profitability questions that traditional economic development has, and step back and look at some of the statistics out of the Small Business Administration saying that 44% of new jobs are going to come in this country through startup firms with only a few employees. Kind of sounds like a small farm, doesn't it? So we see it coming there. We also see that in these economic times, a lot more people are thinking in the entrepreneurial vein, that projections are that 1 of every 4 rural citizens will be self-employed in about 4 years, actually. And I see this happening. My phone has rung constantly in the last 2 years with someone saying, I've lost my job, I'm thinking about doing this, or our son's coming home, we want to expand into this. So when we think about jobs and profitability, small is not bad. Profitable is what we're aiming for. And again, I find that some of these smaller operations, once they're profitable, are now looking at new enterprises or expansion that may add 1 or 2, but really have pumped up their dollars. So back to developing the site, we looked at this. Probably one of the modules that addresses this the most is we partnered with the Chesapeake Bay Foundation and put up a green jobs module to the site. Now you may say, oh, everything's supposed to be ag and natural resources. There are a lot of business and job opportunities in the green industry in Maryland, and I would suspect that you could transfer that across the country as well. So back to that content 24/7, we did not lose sight about creating jobs. It was a real concern early on. When we built the site, originally the topics here on the left, we talked about business development. You know, back to the survey. We saw that people needed help with writing a business plan. Not just a business plan, but we call it Dream Plan and Implement, so that we can help them sort of search through their ideas in entrepreneurship, how to put the plan together. You know, mostly people ask me, what's my first step? How do we do this? We try to chunk out a map and stepwise for them. We put in legacy planning. Now, some of you may consider this estate planning, but working with our business management specialist, Dale Johnson here at University of Maryland Extension, he reminded us that it's not just the land transfer, it's often the business transfer as well. So we need to be able to help people bring in the next generation or perhaps expand or sell their business to someone else. Of course, the access to expertise, we wanted a strong resource component on the site where people could go find more information, not only at the University of Maryland, but land-grant institutions, regional economic development centers that have great research on them. We wanted to be able to, again, this launch pad out to, you don't know what you don't know to learn, and then to add a component for new and next generation farmer programs. And here in Maryland, we have a pretty strong internship program developing with some farms. We also have some second-generation farmers, I call them, because they may have retired from government agencies or some other area and have located here in Maryland and have taken up farming. So we have several different types of new and next-generation programs. Those were the components that originally built the backbone of the content to the site. In the 2 years since it's been launched, we have found that food processing, value added are topics that folks are looking for lots of information on. And remember, they were also the components that the health department and MDA were looking for a little relief on how to get their information out and how to link. And I will say that the Maryland Health Department now actually has a link to people for farmers markets, all their regulations and what they need to come back to the Maryland Rural Enterprise Development Center. Same way with on-farm processing value-added links. When you go to the health department, they just have you click our link and come back to us. We also have, since the launch, expanded some of the distance learning modules. As technology has moved forward with webinars such as this, we want to post them there. We also have things that are downloadable onto iPods and iPhones so that people can take these with them, that they're not tied to the computer for all this information. They can take it on the tractor and go out and keep working, but listen to options and so forth. One of the major components we put on the site, and I'll show this to you in the next slide, was a Maryland Business Resource Site map. And what that is comprised of is we took the state of Maryland and showed all the counties, and visitors to the site can click on their county and have come up there where their extension office is, where all their county offices are located. Like, where's my health department? Where's my planning office? Who do I contact for a business license in my county? So that the people didn't have to search all over the place for local assets. We also put a tab on there for state resources, for financing, for registering businesses, for federal programs, and so forth. And then we also added a tab for other regional resources they might use. So it's a one-click, get me to my county resource. It's been one of the most popular items we had on the site. And then finally, we put lots of links to resources. People are just looking for, where do I go next? And it's not like a Google resource list. We try to be very targeted. If you're reading about pastured poultry, the links under resources are current to pasture poultry. They don't send you all over the place. I'm going to pause because I caught in my eye that there's been a lot of questions here.
So it's primarily, some of it was just chat, Ginger. I asked folks if there were any topics that they would suggest you add to this based on our conversation earlier. But one of the questions that just came up are relating to the site. Are there any fees associated with getting the assistance that you're providing through the center? And who manages or responds to the questions? And how do you monitor to keep it current? So there's basically three there.
Okay, at this time there are no fees. We have, for the past 2 years, talked about would we charge to come out and write business plans for folks. We, at this point, have not. University of Maryland Extension is developing a cost recovery program. What we're seeing is that, again, this is the launch pad to get you started. Perhaps down the road there may be fees, but at this time there are not. We do ask, though, that certain components on the site you register to get into so that we can collect data on who's using the site, how often are they there, which components that we need to beef up or there's questions. Let me see. Who manages the response to the questions? I have a wonderful web designer who works with, who set up the website and works with it, and questions are sent to her, and she'll send them on to me, and I handle most of them. We try to respond by email, but I often use those questions. I ask for phone number and get back to folks for clarification. While the web's a wonderful thing, at some point we need a one-on-one communication for me to hear from them what they're trying to do and where the problem is. And how do we monitor and keep it current? We have Google Analytics on the site, as well as the university has an analytical tool that we monitor the top 10 pages for hits. We also monitor the most common search words to get to the site. So if there's an area that people are going to a lot, we need to take a look at it. Or if they've been searching under a term that we don't address well, it's a heads up for us. This is an area that we need to work on more.
So Ginger, we have one other one, and I'm going to suggest we take that and then skip our next pause for questions, just because we have about 10 minutes and I want you to be able to get through that. So let's just take this one quickly, which is, do you address marketing overall, or is it based on the enterprise?
Okay. On the site, you will find Marketing 101. That's pretty much an overview. On most of the enterprises, and let me just go forward to this site, on these top 10 pages, and I'm on the left-hand bar here, these top 10 pages are by what's being visited the most, and each of these pages is set up with an overview, resource, and under resources, often marketing or PowerPoint, and then other links back to, I have an ag marketing page, agmarketing.umd.edu, to follow up with this. And on my ag marketing page are lots and lots of enterprises that you can search. Now, while I'm on this page, this is the top half of the home page, and I just wanted to go over on the top toolbar in blue there, that Dream Plan Implement is where we do a lot of business planning, entrepreneur type information. Enterprises, we did alternatives, traditional, hot topics in Maryland. We developed the hot topics based on, I always poll extension agents as to what kind of phone calls they're getting every 6 months, like what are the topics they want to hear more about, and we developed a hot topics page about what people are calling in. And then, of course, the other tabs across here I already talked about. This MREDC resource map is the icon for what I was talking about, that county pages. And let me get to the bottom of one of the pages. This is, on the left, that hot topics list, what we've been getting lots of questions about, so people can search pretty quick. We are probably going to change some of this to do a quick search button. We try to update this page about every 2 months, actually, to keep people coming back fresh. This is the bottom of a food processing page. I just wanted to show you that we have these additional links with the health department and MDA, And then we set up a quick search again about what kind of license do you need, who do you need to go to. This is the big question. I often work with food processors, all kinds of value added. And then we actually post our state and federal rules here. So again, people can hit these pretty quick. The distance learning, we do podcasts, webinars, and video. We have started to ask all our agents and to put Camtasia on their computers. We're working on some grant applications to get that on, so that's a program that can record audio over a PowerPoint, so that every time they do presentations at conferences and so forth, we can capture it and load it to the site. We're really getting a good library of different topics that people can actually see slides and have a contact information for follow-up if they don't understand things. Video, we've done some great video work with our teen entrepreneurs in the city of Baltimore. There's actually a high school that tore up their football field to put in high tunnels. It's a great story, so if you get a chance to visit that, we're trying to highlight youth on here as well.
Andrew, that's a great idea to be able to tap into your statewide resources by recording their presentations. I love that.
I actually had this, I stole that from West Virginia University, who did it at one of Tom McConnell's conferences, and I thought, how cool is this? We should all be doing this.
Great. Oh, West Virginia. Okay, I'm going to suggest that, again, if there are additional topics, please type those in. Let's move past this one, Ginger, because we do have one more opportunity for questions at the end, and let's get to your outcomes.
Okay, just some quick outcomes. Are we getting hits in 2 years? We're up to 18,000 hits per year. And my web guru has told me these are true hits. These are not things that just pass through the pages they're searching. So they are from Maryland, but I'm just amazed they're from all over the country. We do monitor this every month. As I said, we do have some brief registrations for certain documents so we can track our audience. About the fees, we're struggling right now still with the college to give us access to credit cards. We can't take credit cards yet. To charge any kind of fee, we almost have to be able to do that. So when we get to the 21st century on that, I'll let you know. Again, we track those search words that I talked about as a way of keeping content new and revived. But I will also tell you, other agencies like our wine council sends me information about their website. The horse industry is putting more and more information on the site. It's developing as a resource for people to park some of their things that they don't know where to send elsewhere, but all have to do with business development. So we're very encouraged by those new partnerships. And as I said, to date, we've done about 100, about 98 actually, business plans that we've helped through online, and then probably about half of those I've actually done follow-up visits to write out. Now, give us a year or two, and I'm going to go back and follow up on how many of those plans have turned into business and the true economic impact of that. We're just giving that time to mature. We have partnered on about $150,000 in funded grants where we are an outreach arm. For instance, we're totally into the new aquaculture program here in Maryland, the governor's program to bring oyster development back to the bay and get new watermen started in the business here. That program is actually going to use the Maryland Rural Enterprise Development Center as their site for all that grant information, their resources for growing, sourcing oyster products and business plans and so forth. So we're real excited about getting others involved and for them to see us as an integral component in a place to be in their grants and to also assist on workshops and so forth where we capture their programs and bring it out to others. I see West Virginia has a question about buying any of our resources. I'm going to say send me an email and we'll talk. And then a little bit about next steps. We're looking to always expand, particularly in entrepreneurship, we've done a lot with adults. We're really reaching down into our youth. We have a very strong youth entrepreneurship program through 4-H. Talk about leadership and workforce development. It's very strong, and we're expanding there. Certainly business development, we're looking particularly over into forestry, and as I said, the watermen, getting in some areas we haven't been in traditionally, and all things food. It's just a burgeoning enterprise development site down here, particularly in dairy. Because the industry's been stressed, we're seeing a lot more dairy come online, lots more value added as we develop co-packers and help our regulations catch up a little bit with the what's going on out in the farm. I have that down on the arrow, STEM or STEAM, and of course this is the science, technology, the engineering, and math initiative where we're trying to capture more of our youth. I use STEAM because the dean of our college likes to put an A in there for agriculture. So we are looking to expand, particularly in these 3 areas. And I'll skip this real quick because we'll get back to it. So I can get to my last slide because I do want to address on here the Stephen Jobs quote. He says that computers like a bicycle for our minds. And you may think, wait a minute, computers took us to the internet, you know, the information highway. What Jobs meant by this quote was that a bicycle will get you off the main road. It'll take you on the trails and passages you might miss if you stay in the car on the highway. And I like to think that the Maryland Rural Enterprise Development Center helps people get off the main road and dream a little bit and look at some opportunities or ideas for things they want to do and gives them a step-by-step tool to accomplish that.
That's a great quote.
With that, I don't know if we have time, if there's any more questions.
We have 11:30, but if you're willing to take a couple more questions, Ginger, we can keep it open for a couple minutes.
Sure.
Okay, any questions? It looks like Stefan is typing. Great. Any other questions?
If I don't get a chance, I want to thank you all for your time and your input, particularly Heidi, who monitored this for us.
Well, I also just want to thank you, Ginger, while we're waiting to see if anything else comes in, and let the other folks know that we'll be back next month with our final webinar in the Highlights series on June 10th. Jenny Fertig with West Virginia State University Extension and Pat McGill with the Westside Main Street program will be joining us to describe their Main Street Revitalization Program, which is the national program that's embedded within the West Virginia State University's extension system and yielding exciting results from what I've heard. So we're excited about sharing that. And we will be posting this online. I'll also be sending you all an evaluation. If you would just provide feedback, it's helpful for us to know. And we'll send you a copy to the link of the recording and encourage you to share it with others. We're slowly but surely trying to build up these webinars to have people have an opportunity to know what else is going on throughout the region. So we'd appreciate it if you'd share it. So it doesn't look like we have any other questions. Ginger, any final comments?
I would ask you to visit the site if you get a few minutes and just browse. We're about 240 pages deep right now. So there's lots there, but there's things that we can always post, things that we can learn. If you give me any feedback on it, I'd appreciate it, but please take a look and browse. And, you know, if you see something that you like and would like to use, just get in contact with me.
Great, and it looks like we have one more person typing. Super.
Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, Ginger. And with that, we'll be closing the meeting. Have a great day, everyone.
You too.
Thank you.